Let me just start by saying that Knocked Up was not my favourite film of 2007, but it was a decent film nonetheless. But with This Is 40, I thought it would be a lot more interesting to follow Pete and Debbie, the characters from Knocked Up, and their family, because I felt that there was more material there. And it seemed like the film they were trying to create in Knocked Up would be a lot better if they had had a lot more Pete and Debbie and a little less Seth Rogen and Katherine Heigl, because the family they were trying to create out of this awkward situation was not really one that you wanted to see develop, but you sort of got this strong sense of family from Pete and Debbie and their children, and I think that's what really sold Knocked Up to me. Was their scenes and their interaction with the main characters. So when This Is 40 came out, I was actually quite excited to watch it, and I think it one ups Knocked Up in a way because it has a lot more heart, and the script's a lot better, and it's a lot funnier because there's so much more to work with, and it's got a great supporting cast, and I think it's got a stronger cast than Knocked Up, and I think that's down to Judd Apatow's keen eye as a director, but it's also down to the fact that it's got these two great leads in Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann, and I think they mesh well together, and they also mesh well with Judd Apatow's real life children who play their children, and also Leslie Mann's his wife. So I think it would make sense that the kids would interact well with her, considering she's their mother. But I think it adds a whole new element because there's this air of truth to it. And oddly enough, Paul Rudd fits into the ensemble really well, despite the fact he doesn't have that personal connection. There seems to be this sort of family unit set up in the film that's really quite well done, and it feels really truthful. And I think one of the problems that I did have with it is the fact that despite the fact they interact really well, it doesn't really feel like the modern family, and it doesn't really feel true to life. But it's a film, so I didn't really have all that much trouble getting over it, but I think they were trying to emulate some idea of the modern family, and I think no one really knows what the modern family is. So I think that's where they struggled, and it feels quite dated, as if it's trying to depict a family, but it's trying to depict a family from years ago, from a few years ago when the idea of a family was more set in stone, more easy to determine. And I think there's moments in the film where you can really feel that it's not of this period, and even the Lost references, which there are tons of, are 3 years old, and it just doesn't feel like they're depicting a film that would take place in this present. But that being said, there are some great parts of the film. One of them being the introduction of Pete and Debbie's fathers, played by Albert Brooks and John Lithgow, respectively. They're really, really funny, and they also have these really great storylines that they come in with, and like Debbie's estrangement from her father, which has this really nice scene at the end, which sort of depicts why things broke down, and you get this really quite uh, disturbing but emotional interpretation of one aspect of modern family life, which is the estrangement that comes with divorce and things like that. And the relationship between Pete and his father, played by Albert Brooks, is another example, because it's it's a relationship where he's far too close and far too reliant upon his father, despite the fact that his father is not as developed as he is. He isn't the best man to ask about things. He isn't the best man to learn from. He's a bit of a shyster, and it's a film that accurately depicts the fact that at some point you are going to get to a stage where you should stop relying so heavily on your parents. And I think that was a nice touch to the film, and it really rounded it out quite nicely. And I think as a film, I think it's never better than when it's not using the comedy so much and it's relying upon these relationships. That being said, there are some really standout performances, and oddly enough, one of them is by Megan Fox, who plays one of Debbie's employees, who is absolutely hilarious and is worth the ticket price alone because all her scenes are really funny, and she interacts really well with the rest of the cast, and also with the other employee of Debbie's, which is played by I think Charlene Yee, and they're really funny, these two characters, and how they mess with Debbie and they also like Debbie, and just the relationships in this film are what it's worth seeing it for. And in any aspect, that's what rings true. It's the relationships, not the tone and not the family dynamics. It's the way that these characters interact and the way that they're written and the way they talk. It's very true to life and very touching. So I think that's why I liked it as a film, and I think that's why it's a lot better than Knocked Up, because it has a stronger emotional aspect to it, and I think that's what you're looking for in a film. And if I was going to give it a score, I'd give it a 6 out of 10.